Joe's not here, but yeah, because they started coming in like 4 to 6, so. All right, here we go. Call to order. Yeah, are we on?
Yeah,
Great. Is Linda's there?
Linda is not there.
Okay, fine. All right, here we go. Thank you. All right, Heather, you're on.
Okay. So usual suspects, updated through, it says October, but it's November, apologies. So we'll just run through them quickly. So it shows you where we are year to date. I also added the approved 2025 budget, so you can see what some of the increases / challenges may be in the next fiscal year. So you can see for plumbing and building permits combined, we are at 218 versus a budget of 245. There's still December to go. I know last December we had a big month, but it just varies. We don't really know. So, we're at 90% of the budget with 90% of the year done. So that's looking pretty decent.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
This came up from one of my constituents about the plumbing permits. Are these permits fees that people who are not licensed Hudson plumbers have to pay?
I do not know.
Okay, because apparently we have a situation where the Board of Plumbers of Hudson, you have to sit an exam. And if you don't sit that exam and get approved by the Board of Plumbers of Hudson, no matter how small the job is, you have to pay a fee of like $200-300. The problem is that the Board of Plumbers currently doesn't exist.
I don't think it's existed in the entire time.
Has not existed for a very long time. And so there are people who they might have a job that's like $100, $150 small job, and they have their regular plumber, and they have to pay this fee to the city because they're not using. So, but you don't know. I should follow up probably with Craig on that, right?
Yes, I can do that.
He would know who. And if I'm using a registered plumber in Hudson, I'm wondering if there's any permit.
No, I need to get,
So I think the plumber needs to get a permit, the same way that the
No, no,
contractor needs to get a permit. But
so the city plumber, from what I know, my experience, and I used a lot of plumbing. If you any kind of work you do in the city of Hudson, you need a permit. As long as if the work is from the main to the house. If the work is done in the house, you usually don't need a permit. You don't need the city plumber. Okay. But everybody needs.
I mean, you can do your own plumbing work. I've done some of my own plumbing work, so.
You know what, this sounds like a job for legal.
That's great.
This sounds like a legal.
Okay, I'll follow it up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Heather.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I'll talk about it.
Okay, so you can see for parking, on off-street parking, we're about 87% of the budget. We did have a good month last month for the Front Street Municipal lot, so we're slightly higher than the budget at that point, but that was before, the budget was determined before the change in the pricing happened. So obviously we're gonna be keeping an eye on that. Parking and other permits is a little low. Don't really know why. And then parking tickets are basically right on trend for that. But you can see that the 2025 budget, and this is true for plumbing and building permits as well, you can see that the 2025 budget numbers are significantly more aggressive than what we're seeing currently. The building permits increase was because we do have some additional developments happening with the Mill Street lofts and things like that. So that was taken into consideration there. You can see in the next section that the Front Street lot, you can see basically that everything has gone up with the exception of parking and other permits. And the rationales, I know we've discussed this in the budget meetings, but just as a reminder, on and off street parking are we're going to have more parking meters as they put in the ones below Third. And also, I believe we were looking at taking an increase on just a regular parking ticket. But obviously that's your guys' collective call. And then parking tickets, same logic basically. If there's more meters, there'll be more parking tickets probably.
What if we don't meet the numbers, we come really low or something? Is that fund balance money then?
Yeah, basically, you get your revenues, you get your expenditures. To the extent that the revenues are higher than the expenditures at the end of the year, and when we budget to be revenue neutral. Revenues and expenses always match. To the extent that revenues are higher, fund balance goes up. When we don't, fund balance goes down. I think we discussed this in one of the last meetings in 2023, when we finally finished the audit. We basically added about 40 grand to the fund balance compared to, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've done in the past, because we're peaking out on all of these new revenue streams that we've been able to benefit from over the last, 5 years. So yeah, I mean, I think 2025 it's going to be a tough year to watch. I mean, I obviously wouldn't have put anything out there if I didn't think it was at least somewhat achievable. But I've been very straightforward in all the budget meetings that I think it's aggressive, and we have to all hope that some of this stuff really pans out.
So during the budget thing, we were talking about the parking ticket things. I went back and checked because I thought it was more than $10, but the part
It's $10 now.
it's only $10 right now. I thought it was
Yeah.
higher than that
Oh, yeah, no.
because I had gotten a ticket and. for some
Oh, that's
reason-
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so I went back and I checked and it was actually $10. So
Yeah.
that's the ticket if you overstay a meter.
Correct.
If you park illegally on Thursday night on Union Bridge.
Right, like on the wrong side,
It's
that's
$25.
25, yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you don't pay your ticket, it goes from 10 to 35, I think, because it's a
I don't
$25 charge. That's something else that I would like you collectively to consider. My understanding, and I believe I am right about this, is, you get your parking ticket, you have to pay it within X days. If you don't get it within X days, you get another $25 charge. And then nothing, ever again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like you pay your parking ticket after, 45 days, or you pay your parking ticket in 2.5 years. It's the exact same amount of money. I think there should be an
That
escalation.
doesn't sound right.
No,
And I think $10 is too low.
I agree. But, again, that's you guys, so get to work. Let's get some of those fees raised.
Yeah, 5 years ago, we changed it from 8 to,
Yeah,
10.
8 to 10, like 2 or 3 years ago at this point.
it was when I was practicing.
Yeah, so even that.
So it's like even longer ago. but
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we can do a tiered approach too, like after X time, like just 3
Yeah.
months, after 6 months.
Yeah.
Right, and then just.
Because that might also motivate people to pay, because if there's no additional penalty, why bother? We've just got this amount sitting out, and eventually I'll get to it, Unless we start fruiting again, which I
I was
think is
gonna
also a possibility. I know the chief is looking to enact that, which would be great, so,
And when does booting kick in, so to speak?
don't know.
No, that is,
Sorry.
Okay, so, yeah, so the biggest thing, so parking tickets, we understand, and then, the biggest increase in the parking arena is the municipal lot. We don't know what's going to happen with that change in getting rid of the, Amtrak lots. I know at least Jennifer thought it was going to add a huge amount of more money. We took a slightly more conservative and yet still pretty aggressive approach in terms of estimating what might come in 2025, but that's going to be something that I'm going to be tracking pretty much on a monthly basis. Didn't get a chance to do the update for today, but, for the trend, but I'll do that for 2025 and we can see. Okay, various taxes, I don't think nothing's changed on this one except for the lodging tax. We won't get the last sales tax until January, so that'll be a charge back. Cannabis, I think they're trying to do it every quarter, so we probably will get 2 things to get charged back to 2024. Mortgage tax is done, and you can see we came slightly ahead of that, and lodging taxes through November. But it'll be a little higher than that too, because part of what we collect in the January, February, March, what we collect in March, 1 month of it gets charged back to 2024 as well. So we won't really know until the end of March what that number looks like. But you can see it looks quite a bit lower, both versus where we were at 2023 and compared to the budget. And then you can see it looks very low compared to 2025. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that's one of the most aggressive numbers. But having said that, remember, there's going to be a 1%.
I was just gonna say that, there's a
Increase.
resolution tonight on.
Yes.
lodging tax.
There's going to be a 1% increase that takes place. And,
The state has okayed that, I'm sorry.
yes, the state approved it like 2 weeks ago,
Sorry.
and then I immediately got and said like, okay, the state's approved it, but don't we need the council to do a resolution? And Crystal said, yes, I'll get it done right away, because we obviously have to let our lodging tax software provider know, because they're gonna have to change it in order to,
Yeah, and let
do the calculations.
a lot of people know.
Yeah, so basically, we're targeting the start date, because they file on quarterly, they file on New York State quarterly. So it's too late to get into the quarter that has December in it, because you didn't pass it. You didn't have the ability to, because the state hadn't passed it yet. So we're targeting March 1st as the kick-in date for, I'm assuming you're gonna go for the full 1%. New York's is up to 1%, but I assume you're gonna do the full 1%. So that'll be effective starting March 1st, which ties into a quarterly tax filing cycle.
And this includes short-term rentals,
Yes.
Yes.
the lodging tax.
Yes.
And one of the kind of unknowns here is the number that will disappear because of the sunsetting.
I think you're seeing it already. I think that's why that number has dropped considerably versus it. I don't think we're gonna get another, $180,000 just in December and, and the chargeback. I mean, we'll get some, it'll go up beyond the 380 for sure, but.
And the cannabis is 4%. Colin actually told me it was 4% off the top, but then we're learning that it's really not.
It's not. It is 4%, the state, I think, does 9, the locality, the county gets 4, the county keeps 25% of it, so we get net 30%.
30%.
Three.
3%. Sorry.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry.
What are you smoking?
I'm funny. You're funny.
So again, that's another number that's, pretty aggressive, the 235 estimate for 2025.
Right, especially since there's gonna be one in Greenport now too, so this.
Right. So that's basically it. I'm not gonna spend too much time in the other stuff because I have a little presentation I want to walk you through. The only thing of real note is that we're gonna start the implementation of this financial systems upgrade, and that's gonna be a nightmare, but it'll be worth it. And we do finally have a meeting scheduled on the sidewalk improvement district, because it's just been sort of, it has to happen. Like, the numbers need to be figured out. We need to figure out how they're gonna get onto the assessment roll. Somebody needs to figure out who's gonna create the form for the exemptions. How is that gonna get filed? Who's it gonna get filed with? There's gonna be people who challenge. According to the local laws I read it, the council is gonna be the people that determine whether the challenges are approved or not. Who's gonna coordinate that? Yada, yada, yada. So there's a lot. Not to mention the fact that we're gonna need to actually figure out how to get it onto the tax bill, which is a whole other challenge, but at least we don't have to worry about that. Most immediately, the new software company, same software company, new name, new software type, are aware of it. But, there are a lot of moving parts to this, and
Is Gary the head of
Gary is the chair of the Public Works Board, and then they hired Delaware? It's either Delaware or the other one.
They hired a local,
And then basically.
I can't remember the name.
And so when is the deadline that you need all the numbers for to put on the tax?
Well, I don't need it, the assessor needs it. But having said that, I know that Suzette, who is currently the director of real property at the county level, wants a test file in in January, so they can, make sure they can get it into the assessment database. And then I would assume they would need something by February or March at the latest. Don't quote me on that, but I would assume it would be February, March at the latest, because it has to be on the tentative assessment roll, and I think that gets issued in March.
But a sample file of what?
The fees that are going to be added to every single person's tax bill.
They have to have a file.
Okay, so, and they haven't even.
No.
Oh, okay.
I believe you just approved last month, you approved an addition, it's Crawford, that they're using Crawford, not Delaware. I think you approved an extension to the agreement with Crawford for them to now actually create the numbers and the data that will need to be uploaded into the assessment database.
So if they don't meet that deadline, then everything gets pushed back a whole year.
So also there needs to be some review of how those calculations are made, because there is some confusion in the discussions that I have listened to
Oh, it's
As to-
incredibly
as
complicated.
to what the actual methodology is.
And that's
It's
what,
not that,
that
it's
is
not
what the
that,
public works board is
it's not that,
chartered to do.
it's not that complicated for a straightforward residential home. It's actually not that complicated. It's very complicated
For
for
commercial.
business, for commercial.
Yes.
Well, but don't forget, the residential, you have the ones that didn't work and they need to be, they're getting a discount for all the work they did.
Yeah,
So if they have receipts, then you have to go through all that. you know?
So you're going to go through this presentation now, right?
Yes.
I want to ask you a real quick question.
Sure.
Tonight, there's a thing that I just got this afternoon, police department promotion to captain. I'm sure you're aware of this.
I heard about it the other day for the first time, yes.
So my question is, like, presumably that was in the 2025 budget?
I do not know. It was not verbally said out loud that promotion.
I don't remember it being said, no. So do we know where that money's coming from?
You would have to ask the chief.
Okay,
All right, let's go through.
Moving on.
Presentation.
Okay, so as I'm sure all of you know, there's been a bunch of people coming in and saying, oh, the budget's increased $5 million in 5 years and the city's out of control. So I thought it might be useful to provide a little insight as to that. So I'll just go through this real quick. You're lucky I was going to do a whole animated PowerPoint thing, but then I didn't want to make him have to upload it. So I just did a simple printout. Okay, so it is absolutely true. The citywide budget was $14.9 million in 2020 and it is now $19.8 million. So it's $4.86 million increase in 5 years. So first question, where is the bulk of that coming from? And no surprise, 80% of it is the general fund. So that's the funds that you mostly think about, with most of the departments in them. But as you also know, we also have a water fund, a sewer fund, and a cemetery fund. They're all operating funds. They are all self-funding, except for cemetery. So we all know that. Okay, so I assumed for this purpose that we were most interested in the general fund. So if you go to the fourth slide, you can see that basically those four that I have highlighted account for over 75% of the increase in that period of time. So DPW, 925,000 up, benefits, 800,000 up, police, 680,000 up, and debt service, 627.
On debt service, how much of that is long-term debt service?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
And let me just remind you, what you're looking at is the increase. You're not looking at the
Right.
budget. We're looking at the $5 million, in this case, the $4.0 million increase in the general fund.
And youth has a 200,000 increase.
Correct.
Over 5 years.
Yes. correct.
So if you go to the next chart,
Most of that occurred in 1 year. In years.
so if you go to the next chart, all this does is say, so we start with those four and we add the next four largest departments, basically, that now covers 95% of the total increase. And those additional four are interfund transfers, the youth department, the mayor's office, and the library. Okay, so let's go through the four biggest ones. So what makes up the increase in DPW? Well, you can see from slide 6, out of that 925, 728,000 is state touring routes and pave our potholes. Those are new state-funded programs that didn't exist in 2020. So it's like CHIPS and it's like ESR or EWR, but they're just new ones. So while it looks like the DPW budget went up by almost $1 million, $750,000 of it is just completely offset by revenue.
Correct.
It's just more expenditure and more revenue that's being spent. So it's really budget neutral.
Right.
The bulk of the other increase, no surprise, is personal services. Because, you've got union contracts and we've got union contracts, but I don't think there's been any significant increase in the number of employees or, the pay scales. So it's really just, contractual increases. And that's what this next chart shows too. So if we look at benefits, that's another huge hit. So benefits, $800,000 in just 5 years. Of that, almost $500,000 is the city's mandatory contribution to the police retirement system and the retirement system for everyone else. And I can tell you that back in 2020, the total contribution for both retirement systems was about $810,000. The contribution for just the police retirement system in 2025 is roughly $825,000.
Is it more police in number?
Not really, but if you'll see, the police salaries have skyrocketed and retirement is based on their
It's
salaries.
not more numbers, they were at 22, last time I talked to the chief, and one of those people was still paid down, so they FTEs have not.
Okay.
So, yeah, and you can see just even the increase, so basically, we're roughly 20, let's say 26 people, because the dispatchers are included in that. We pay like $800,000 a year, and then for the other like 80 city employees, we pay like $300,000 a year.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, people want to talk about it, having the police department is expensive.
Yeah, it's
It is very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, Germantown got rid of theirs a few years ago, but, you know.
Okay, then if you go to the next slide, you can see that, you know, on top of that 60%, another 30% is an increase in basically
I'm sorry,
hospitalization.
going back to police. Is there a county offset, the fact that we have our own police and that we don't use the
No.
county police? There's no like credit that they give us?
Nope.
The county? No.
No, I mean, we get a little bit of money from the school district to have the school resource officer there.
Mhm.
And we now, just in the last year, and I think Michonne is going to do it this year again, we're getting a little bit of money from Greenport to provide port security there.
Correct.
But that's it.
But, okay, so.
Yes.
Because and I was under the misconception that, you know, because we don't use the county police forces, that the county gave us a credit towards police, but.
If they do, I don't know about it.
Don't they pay for the officer at the school?
Yeah, that's the.
Well, the school district does. That's not the county though. That's the school.
But in the budget discussion with police, there was no reference to any monies coming in from the county. It was just for the port and for school.
So basically between those two things, that's 90% of the increase in benefits right there. So we don't really have any control over that, short of, you know, reducing the number of people we have and therefore have to provide health insurance too, or renegotiating the costs. And, you know, we have 2 healthcare plans, MVP and Empire. Empire costs almost 10 times as much per person as MVP does.
And who has Empire, please?
Police are the only people that are allowed to add it as a new employee. There are legacy people that have it, you know, that if they've been forever, like Tracy, for example, you know, people that have been here for a long time, they've all grandfathered in.
Right.
But
But new hires.
the only new hires that can add it are HPD.
And how much, do you know how much MVP is per month? The premium for the city?
I mean, I can get you the numbers. It's, I want to say like, for the employee contribution, I think it's like $250 a pay period, maybe.
Wait, did you say 10 times? That's high?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
I may be exaggerating slightly, but I'm not exaggerating a lot. Like, we pay over $100,000 a month to Empire for the Empire Health Insurance Plan. And I think we pay somewhere between maybe around 15 grand, somewhere between 10 and 20 grand to MVP for the same period of time.
and there's far more people on MVP.
I'd have to check to be sure. There's a lot of people on Empire right now
Do you
because
know,
everybody in HPD.
you don't know what the
chooses it.
monthly premium friendly fee is?
I don't know it off the top of my head. We have it obviously, but I don't know it off
I'd
the top
like
of
to
my head.
know.
I mean, is it better service? You know,
I've never had Empire, so I don't know.
fair enough.
You know, people claim that it's the gold
It is,
standard,
it is.
so, but is it that much better than, I mean, you know, my husband went through some very personal and expensive healthcare issues and MVP was great.
It's all about who's in the network. It doesn't really matter what the insurance is, if the doctor's in the network, then the network, then you get some care.
Okay.
Okay, so if we go down now to slide 10, so benefits we talked about, DPW we talked about, the next highest increase is the police department budget. And you can see out of the $677,000 that they went up, almost all of it is just in personal services. So I mean, you take that and you add the retirement increase in it, and there's over $1 million right there for just one department. Debt service, and this gets to your question, Margaret.
Yeah.
Virtually the entire increase is because of the short-term borrowing. And very little of that is going to be converted to long-term borrowing.
And those short-term borrowings relate to things where we have to expend money to do a project and we then get reimbursed. So
Correct.
it's like DRI, that kind of thing, right?
Like you
It's
can
very
see-
street
yeah,
bridge part of, and that
it
is
sure is. If you look at slide 11, it says that specifically, actually.
Yeah, I tried to explain to people that, yeah, it went up, but we have these projects that are going on that we will get reimbursement for, but these are very big dollar infrastructure projects.
Right.
So eventually we will get paid for, but
Right.
what we have to focus on is, aside from those, we need to be really managing the core operational budget. And that's, you know, we have the personnel stuff that's very, the benefits piece.
Do we reimburse for the interest as well?
We don't get reimbursed for the interest. We don't get reimbursed because the problem with short-term borrowing is you can borrow 1 year. It's upon anticipation of you borrow it for 1 year, you only have to pay interest. The minute you roll it over into a second year, you have to start paying down the principal on it. So now, this, you know, for the DRI, for example, this free $10 million has now cost us probably $500,000. No, more than that probably at this point. It's still a big deal,
Right.
but,
That's not great.
That we weren't expecting to spend.
right.
Right.
So
But would that, well, I'm sorry, will that be over at a certain point soon?
I believe that the complete streets thing is gonna be finished up in spring or early summer next year. That's the single biggest, that's, you know, $3 million project. We're having discussions with the people who are, interested in the Dunn warehouse, and it looks like we may be able to just transfer that portion of the DRI grant, that $1 million to them, which would take the city out of having to manage that completely,
Yeah,
which would be great.
there's a discussion tonight about revisions.
Yeah, so, you know, it seems like ESD and DOS are willing to consider that, so that takes that out of our plate. Ferry Street Bridge, I think, is also, you know, they got a lot of it done, but, so I think both complete streets, Sagari, and the Ferry Street Bridge should all, and I'm obviously not DPW, but they should all be done by like summer.
Right.
Which means ideally, when I go out and borrow again, when I'm either shutting down the short-term things or converting them into long-term, that's gonna be June, because it happens, you know, on an annual basis. Some of this will go away. On the other hand, we're gonna have new debt, and we've been pretty good about trying to hold off doing something until, like, we know this debt service is going away, so they'll kind of balance it. We're not gonna have quite that luxury because we're gonna have to finance for the new, what do you call it? Pumper truck. So that's like $1.5 million, and there's nothing to offset that. The NIPA from a debt service standpoint doesn't have anything to offset it, but it should be offset by significantly lower operating costs. So that should be relatively neutral, and then will be very beneficial once the break-even period is over. But again, it's gonna be one of these things that maybe for a short period of time, it's gonna look unfavorable, but at the end of the day, it'll be okay. And then, let's see, other, one of the big ones, and again, very much like police, 200,000, the 220,000 or 218,000 is all personal services.
Now, the staffing has increased in the youth department.
I presume so.
The actual staffing has increased.
And then the last chart is, instead of just looking at it as departments, I actually looked to basically the individual sort of line items, what were the highest line items, kind of, the top 10. There's a couple I combined because like police only has one personal services line, but youth has technically 3, but it's still all personal services. So those I added together, but they are basically, for all intents and purposes, just a line item in the budget as opposed to a whole department line. So obviously the state touring routes, we already talked about, that's revenue neutral. Police personal services is the next one. The short-term borrowing, which again, we've talked about, will have very little impact in the long term. The New York State retirement system is the fourth largest one. The transfer to the capital fund, you'll see, that's also revenue neutral. This is them selling the old truck. But we also have the revenue of the truck coming in. It turns out it's probably not, we may or may not be selling it this year anyway. But in any case, that's also basically revenue neutral, except that we have committed that the monies from the truck will go to help offset the debt of the new pumper truck. So that helps reduce our debt service. So, so you don't see the whole 225 grand in 1 year, but you do see the 25 grand in the form of reduced debt service on the new truck that's coming in. Medical insurance, youth personal services, DPW personal services, retirement again, but for everybody other than HPD, and the library. So those are basically the top 10 individual expenditures, and all others, everything else in the general fund budget.
This is great. Thank you very
This
much.
is an excellent onward.
Yes.
Yeah, this is.
Did this get posted for this meeting?
No, yeah,
Okay, but we can post it, right? So that
Oh, yeah.
people can see it.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, usually Linda,
Yes,
I'm usually
absolutely.
doing this, at the very last minute before the meeting, and Linda asks me for it, and then Linda posts it. I'll have it.
No, it's really excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. Yeah, because people don't understand.
Although we discussed this at BEA, this was, a lot of this was discussed in the.
Yes, it was. I know. So I know,
So
in many ways, I'm kind of
yeah,
teaching you
it
to
was-
convert it here, but I thought it might be easier
No,
for
it's
some
really
people to understand if it was in graphic form, although I know there's a big debate over pie charts, whether people like them or hate them. I like a pie chart. I did a pie chart. But yeah, I'm hoping that I do want it posted and,
Yeah.
hoping that,
But we can see what it is.
Yeah, people can see. For the parking ticket tiers, to do a tiered system, would that go through this committee? Yeah,
I would assume so.
right?
Oh, the finance committee, I would assume so, yeah. Or
Right.
parking, or
We can,
some combination.
Yeah,
It's a
finance
fee
committee.
schedule, basically, is what you're talking about.
so finance can control the piece, and we just do like over, okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I don't know enough of the specific objectives of the different committees that have been formed to be able to necessarily answer that, but between
It
finance and
probably
parking,
is gonna be a finance issue.
I would
since
think
we're
so.
raising a rate, yeah.
I would think so, but
I have a question. Fund balance, because, concern about taking 800,000 out. And the response is, it's very healthy. Controller says you have to have at least 2 months of.
it does not say that General Finance Officers Association provides it as a minimum recommendation.
How much do we have in terms of?
It's a complicated question. We do have a pretty healthy fund balance. I want to say it's somewhere in the high 3 millions.
Right, but how many, if you were to convert that into months, what would it come out to?
Out of 19, no, it's 3 million out of 19.
Hi. Not job. I mean, if our operating cost is like roughly 14 million, it's like $1 million.
Right.
So maybe 4 months, because we don't really spend that much.
Right.
4 or 5 months. But the other thing I would like to point out is that there's overall fund balance, right? But some of that fund balance is restricted and can't be touched. Some of it. So what you really have to look at is you have to look at your total fund balance. You have to look at the unallocated fund balance. And you also have to look to see if you've got other fund balance commitments, because in prior years, we've had capital reserves. We had, money to put against Ferry Street Bridge. We had money to put against the fire truck. I mean,
We have money that we put against the sidewalks.
No,
No?
that's an interfund loan.
Oh, okay.
Sidewalks has to pay for that themselves. The sidewalk district has to pay for that.
Okay.
But, at this point in time, we no longer have any capital reserves. So you can look at the, unallocated fund balance, but I would caution you to think that, should there be things like the pumper truck that we should be setting some money aside for? And that would in turn reduce the amount of the unallocated fund balance. And when they talk about that 18% or 2 months, they're talking about the unallocated fund balance.
Okay.
Or unreserved unallocated numbers that are unchecked.
Didn't we just buy a truck or is this a second truck? Am I confused?
Yes,
We did buy it.
you bought a truck and then you approved another truck, so now we're buying another truck.
We're stopping.
Huh?
We're stopping.
We also bought a boat.
Real simple. Well,
And you bought a boat, that is
We
true.
approved this, okay, fair enough.
They probably won't need anything for a little while now, hopefully.
I thought we sold something against it, so, right?
Yeah, we got, I want to say we got
The boat was
168
last-
maybe. It's mind-boggling to me that you can buy something for $1.5 million, and when you go to resell it, you can only get like 150
Yeah.
grand. I feel like you could take the parts off of it, sell them individually, and make more money.
I'm going with the second truck was last year.
It was longer than that. It was before that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
And also, the other thing you have to remember is like
Takes a
there's
very
super
long
long
time.
lead times. So
Takes a
it
very
was
long
approved probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think we received it 2 years ago. You approved the pumper truck last year.
Got it.
Tim's already
Right.
got notice that it was supposed to be showing up in like
Yeah.
May of 2025. Now it's not gonna be here till 2026, which is
Yeah.
good. It saves us a year of.
Yeah, I
Well,
remember.
the boat thing, that's been going on for
The
years.
boat thing also got delayed again. So yeah, all the stuff just.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we need a plan.
And we don't do shared services with Bridgeport on fire. Right? That's a whole other
We
question.
do not.
They do, they don't, so they don't.
I mean, we don't do it financially, they obviously do it in real life. I mean,
Sure.
all the companies come out when there's a thing, everybody works together, you know, they come from across the river too, and we go across the river, so. You know, there is shared services in the true sense of the word, but, you know, figuring out, you know, Greenport owes Hudson $13, but Hudson owes Greenport $11, but none of that's happening.
But they do kind of do that with the ambulances and EMT though, no?
Yes. Ambulance is an EMT, so one of the things that you approve is a chargeback
Yeah.
for Greenport EMS to cover the city of Hudson. And the way that works is you approve the dollar amount. It's been $75,000 a year for as long as I've been here. They tried to get it increased a few times. And then that gets added onto the county tax base, basically becomes part of, that 75 gets added into the county tax levy. So we are all collectively paying it through our county taxes.
Okay.
But money well spent, I would assume.
All right, okay, motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
We're done, we're done,
Yes.
we're done. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Very much.
So are you going to be here for the